Mr. Speaker, I'll be sharing my time with the member from Rosemont-La-Petite-Petrie. Mr. Speaker, I'm honored to rise today in this House to speak to this motion on behalf of my constituents from Surrey North. I don't know where to start, Mr. Speaker. What a mess the Conservatives have created. They have badly bungled this program. I have no other ways to describe this. This has been a mess created by this government, Conservative government. Mr. Speaker, there appears to be a trend in this government's response to a number of programs. If we look at the temporary foreign workers, as we see it today, it's all in the papers across this country where Canadian workers are being replaced by foreign workers under this government, or we look at abuses in the Senate by the Conservative and Liberal senators in regards to expenses, or whether we look at the Conservative government's inability to catch tax cheats, or we look at the current program in the immigration program where there are abuses going on. There seems to be a trend under this government where government programs are being abused throughout from different departments, Mr. Speaker, and it appears that this government is growing tired and old, and then they're failing to take leadership and provide leadership for Canadians in order to provide the services and manage programs in a way that the Canadians expect us to do in this country, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative government is once again failing Canadians in order to benefit their rich corporate friends, Mr. Speaker. How is it that in time of high employment, rather than striving to match Canadians with jobs, available jobs, that hardworking Canadians wanting to work at, instead of being replaced with temporary foreign workers? This is unprecedented, Mr. Speaker, and this is happening under this government. And they'll get up. I've seen the members from the Conservative government get up today, and they're talking about the reforms they're bringing in, the Canada Action Plan, their economic action plans, how they're investing money into this, Mr. Speaker. But time and time again, we've seen this picture before many times. This didn't happen just yesterday. This has been going on. The government's known about this program, abuses in temporary foreign workers, for years. And let's take a look at some of the stuff. In fall of 2009, the Auditor General reported that the HRDC's practices, again I quote the Auditor General, do not ensure quality and consistency of decisions when issuing labour market opinions. So these problems with the temporary foreign workers, the government's known that it wasn't working since 2009. Maybe prior to that, we haven't heard any answers when the minister was in the House in regards to when he first knew about it, but we know from the Auditor General that this has been going on for the last 9 years. And yet the Conservatives are getting up in the House here time and time again, oh, we're going to fix this now. Well, Mr. Speaker, they have failed to fix this for the last 4 or 5 years, Mr. Speaker. It's unbelievable, Mr. Speaker. And in 2011, the Conservatives stood up in this House and said, we're going to create this blacklist promising to name employers who have broken the rules of the temporary foreign workers. Mr. Speaker, we haven't seen any blacklist, and there's no companies been charged. And yet, you've seen in this House today, time after time, they're getting up in their seats and getting those talking points from the Prime Minister's office saying, we're fixing this, we're matching Canadians with jobs, Mr. Speaker. That is not what's happening. We know that. Canadians know that. It's time that Conservative government fix this for good, Mr. Speaker. And again, let me give you another example. In November of 2012, there was a mining company in British Columbia, from the province I come from, beautiful province, Mr. Speaker. We had over 200 temporary foreign workers, low-skilled temporary foreign workers, replacing workers in British Columbia, Mr. Speaker. And I know many of the workers from my constituency go up north, and they're more than willing to go up north and work in these mines, Mr. Speaker. But Conservatives chose to bring those temporary foreign workers instead of employing Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, again, in April of 2013, another example. So this problem is not created just today. This has been going on for a number of years, and the government has been notified. We brought this issue up in this House many, many times, and they keep promising, we're going to fix this. It hasn't been fixed, Mr. Speaker. April 2013, the RBC example, where the RBC were bringing in foreign workers to replace Canadians. The government's known about this. This is about a year ago. They still haven't worked since the last year, Mr. Speaker, and this is ongoing. I can go on and on, provide with you other examples where the government has failed to act on temporary foreign workers, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives, under this government, the temporary foreign workers program has grown exponentially, Mr. Speaker. There's over 350,000 temporary foreign workers in Canada at this point. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at the queue to get into this country on a permanent basis for family reunifications, it takes 8 years. And yet, we're importing over 350,000 temporary foreign workers to this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and the Conservatives, you know, they make up stats to justify programs that are seriously broken, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know, because we often hear Conservatives talk about market forces, how they drive our economy. We talk about, you know, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the gas prices today, it's $1.52 a litre in my constituency, Mr. Speaker. I had a number of people in my constituency talk to me about the high gas prices in this country and why, you know, it basically, Mr. Speaker, it adds cost to living for Canadians. And yet, Conservatives will tell you, well, the market drives those prices. You know, there's nothing really we can do. We've proposed many solutions. We've asked the government to appoint an ombudsman to look at these unfair gas prices. And when it comes to cell phones, we've heard in this House, Mr. Speaker, over and over, and the government will tell cell phone prices, that is, Mr. Speaker, they're high, and we know the roaming charges we pay in this country. The government will come back and say, well, Mr. Speaker, they'll tell you, oh, the market forces drive the competition, and we don't really have any control over it. Well, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to wages, get what the Conservatives do. They drive them down. How with temporary foreign workers? Then they use their powers to drive down the wages. So why don't we let free market economy determine wages? No. In a way to help their friends, with corporate friends, they will bring temporary foreign workers to drive Canadian wages down. Mr. Speaker, I don't know how they can justify that to Canadians. You know, they talk about free market. Why don't we let free market determine the wages of people that are going to be employed at these, especially Canadians? Yet the Conservative government interferes in low-paying jobs, in low-skilled jobs. They bring in foreign workers to drive down wages, Mr. Speaker. That doesn't seem to be fair, Mr. Speaker. You know, when it comes to wages, the Conservatives do not believe in the invisible hand in the economy. So, Mr. Speaker, it is clear that the Conservatives have created a double standard to please their big corporate friends at the price of Canadians and their families. This government is assisting these companies to work around the marketplace to disadvantage of Canadian workers only for sake of a bottom line on backs of Canadian families, Mr. Speaker. And I see I have 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. I'll sum it up in very shortly, and I've stated this before. The Conservatives will get up today, time after time. They'll talk about how they're going to fix this. The facts are, Mr. Speaker, the problems have been ongoing in this program for the last 4 or 5 years. This minister, the Minister of Social Development, keeps promising this House, Canadians, that he will fix the problem. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, they have failed Canadians. They have not worked hard enough to make sure that Canadian workers are employed, not temporary foreign workers in the high, good-paying jobs, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Questions and comments? Honorable